Good morning, everybody. It's not great not to see all of you. This is kind of a new experience to me, teaching to cameras instead of all of you. My dad said a couple weeks ago in his sermon that God put us in Hebrews for a reason, and man, did he ever. This chapter that we're going to be talking about today is exactly what I needed to hear and what I hope all of you need to hear as well. And I hope you're encouraged by this message, and I hope that we can just be praying hard for the coronavirus stuff to end and maybe vaccines come out or it be healed or something. I believe in praying powerful prayers, and so I pray that it just disappears so that everyone knows how powerful our God is. But I just hope that we can meet again soon. We miss all of you. And it's just weird not to be here with you on a regular basis. We're going to be talking about Hebrews chapter 13. Last Saturday at 5 o'clock in the morning, I was already up and I couldn't sleep anymore, and so I kind of thought, okay, I'm going to go read that verse again. I had read it a few weeks ago, or I'm going to go read that chapter again, rather, and try to really focus in on what I want my message to say and try to pray about it and ask God to show me what that says. I read the first verse, and it immediately put me in tears. If you know me, you know that's not anything crazy. I'm a fairly emotional person, but that was an interesting thing. That was an experience I had not had before. And so every verse we read today, I think, is so important. We don't have time to go through the entire chapter, but I encourage you to go read it yourself and just see how deep the Bible can be, even when times are so different than when they were back in the time it was written. So Hebrews chapter 13, verse 1 says this: "Keep on loving one another as brothers and sisters." It's just amazing. In these times when we can't be together and times have changed so drastically, it's amazing to me that something can pierce straight to my heart. Keep on loving one another as brothers and sisters. Last week, when Troy and I were here recording his message on video and audio like we're doing right now, Curtis Hain happened to stop by the church. He does some of our bookkeeping stuff, and he said something so profound. He said something that changed my whole view of this, and at the time, I didn't even tell him that he did that, but I'm telling him now, I guess. He said, "This is a strange time we live in, but the best way we can love the people around us is to stay home." And at the time, I thought, man, that's a really interesting way of looking at that. But it just hit me harder and harder as the day went on. The best way that we can love the elderly and the immune-compromised in our community is to stay home. We need to love each other as brothers and sisters any way that we can, and luckily we live in this digital era where we can love each other as brothers and sisters. And it's a weird thing, but one of the biggest ways that we can love each other now is what Curtis said: stay home as much as you can, so you're not in contact with people who might get the virus worse than you, and it might not be good for them. They may pass away from it. One of the amazing stories that has come out of this, I'm going to tell a few today. It was what Troy and Kelly did. If you had kids, I don't think they did it to everybody, but I don't know. I think they only went around to the people with kids. If you got egged last week, I know that my kids viewed that as just amazing. That was so cool. They were so excited. So Troy and Kelly went around. I think it was actually just Kelly and Addie and Kaylin, but I'm not sure. But they went around and they basically, with gloves, and were very sanitary, but they dropped everything. They dropped eggs and candy on people's doorstep and just texted people and said, "Hey, you've been egged. You have some goodies on your porch for your kids." That's something small. They spent a few hours driving around town dropping it off at all of our houses. But man, what an encouraging way to say, hey, I know that we can't be in contact. We can't hug you. We can't love on you like we normally do, but we're still going to show you we love you by distancing ourselves and bringing you a small gift. We're going to move on to verse 2. Verse 2 is even better than verse 1, believe it or not, but it says this: Do not forget to show hospitality to strangers, for by doing so, some people have shown hospitality to angels without knowing it. I don't know about for you, but for me, right now, it is really easy to see people as prospective virus carriers instead of prospective angels. We're still called to seek the lost, show his love, and share the truth. The mission has not changed, just the method. One of the cool stories that has come out of this is in hospital parking lots and the streets outside of hospitals all across the country and across the world. There are emergency personnel and people like you and I going, and they're either turning their four-ways on, they're playing the song Waymaker, and they're praying for the hospital staff. They're praying for these people who are on the front lines battling this evil virus right now. If you haven't seen that, I challenge you to go look at that. It is just amazing to see a parking lot full of cars with their four-ways flashing, knowing that those people are praying for everyone inside. And I know you're not going to believe me, but verse 3 is even better yet. It says this, continue to remember those in prison as if you were together with them in prison, and those who are mistreated as if you yourselves were suffering. There are a lot of us who've been cooped up in our houses for a few weeks now, and it might feel like a prison. It might feel like we can't do anything, we can't go out, we can't live our life like we normally do. It may feel like a prison. To me and my wife, we felt a little guilty feeling this way, but it has felt like a much needed rest from the craziness of life. We were very busy. We do youth group on Wednesdays, church Sundays, obviously. I'm here usually at 8 for worship team practice, and I've been doing that for 5 or 6 years. And Friday night we have small group, which is awesome. We get to connect with a bunch of people. Monday night I usually go to a small group full of some guys that I know that I've been friends with for a really long time to build each other up. And man, it just means that our week gets filled up really quickly. This virus has allowed us to kind of take a step back from busyness and kind of realize what's most important in our lives. But I don't view that as suffering. I'm at home with my family. I'm still getting paid. Some of you are, maybe some of you aren't. It's a break from the busyness and the events, and it's a cleared schedule. That's not suffering. Suffering is the seniors in high school that are going to miss prom this year. The seniors in high school that are going to miss their sports that they were looking forward to their senior year, finally getting to be varsity or whatever that looks like. The kids who are working really hard academically and they wanted that last huge grade before they dropped into college, Ivy League, or whatever that case may be, whatever they're striving for, those kids are suffering. It's the people who are home right now, not because they want to be, but because there's no job to go back to. There isn't a job to leave home for. Those people are suffering. Most of all, I think in this time, it's the nurses and doctors and healthcare workers who serve and love on the people that we cannot right now, regardless of their own health risks. Those people are on the front lines suffering the most right now, being disconnected from their families sometimes on purpose because they don't want to infect them as well. So not only are they working insane hours, but they also don't get to love on their families when they get home. This is why those people cheering outside of the hospital is so, so, so important. There's another cool thing that happens in cheering outside of hospitals that I've seen in big cities usually where there's kind of high-rise apartments right next to hospitals. But during shift changes, which they have asked and they know about, during the shift changes, they go out on their balconies, they go outside, and they just scream so that those healthcare workers know, even though I'm going through these times of turmoil, these times of anxiety, these times of fear, These people not only are supporting me, they love me, and they value what I'm doing. It's so, so cool. It's such an important thing. We're going to continue on with verse 4. This might seem out of place, but I think it's very pivotal. Marriage should be honored by all, and the marriage bed kept pure. For God will judge the adulterer and the sexually immoral. Between the dates of February 24th and March 17th, Washington state alone saw a 22% increase in pornography use. 22% in just Washington between February 24th and March 17th. This world is broken. It's searching for any method of covering up its anxiety, its fears, its even fears of staying home with their family. That can be a scary thing for addicts, for people who don't know how to cope. But that's what they're doing. They're coping. So how are you coping? Are you turning to sin to cope? Some of us are. Some of us need some method of trying to busy our minds so that we don't think about being afraid. I know I struggle with that sometimes, is trying to busy myself and listening to podcasts and constantly having noise so that I don't have the anxiety and the fear of things I cannot control right now. So what's your coping mechanism, and is it a moral one? Is it something you should be doing? Verse 5, continuing on, says this: keep your lives free from the love of money and be content with what you have, because God has said, never will I leave you, never will I forsake you. It is so easy to get things backwards. It's one of the reasons I think Jesus talks so often about money in the New Testament. It's because he wants us to understand how out of perspective we can get when it comes to money. We see wealth and things like they are what complete us, but we know what completes us. It's Jesus. We're headed towards a financially tough time. I don't know how bad it's going to get, but I can't see that a bunch of businesses being closed down for any period of time will not cause some sort of financial chaos in our future. And I encourage you, if you're blessed, to do one thing. If you're blessed with jobs or the means to help, I want you to pray. I want you to ask God to reveal the people who need your financial help, because there are people who are going to need your financial help. Not just within Sunrise here, but out in the world, maybe your neighbors or your friends or your family. If you're the one financially struggling, I want you to remember two things. First of all, God said, I will never leave you, never forsake you. No matter how hard the times are ahead, God is with us. We cannot forget that. No matter what happens, God is with us. I want to ask you this. If everyone here at Sunrise, if you're struggling, please reach out to someone. If you're struggling financially, we want to help you. We don't want you to be in that pit of despair, not knowing where your next meal may come from or how you're going to pay your car payment, whatever that looks like. We want to help you. We don't want this time to be something that causes you to stumble. We want to be there for you. Verse 6 says this: so we say with confidence, the Lord is my helper. I will not be afraid. What can mere mortals do to me? This verse is near and dear to my heart. When Trevor was little, we had started, you can't sleep with the light on, buddy, because you'll never sleep. So we started turning the light on, trying to keep it bright in his room, but then that caused some shadows on the walls, and he was always so afraid of these shadows. And so me and my logical mind, I'm like, what are you talking about? Why are you afraid? You know that shadow on the wall is this stuffed animal sitting here by your nightlight, and it's just casting a shadow. Yeah, but when the lights are off, it looks so scary, right? I don't understand this. And so my wife, in her infinite wisdom, said, hey, let's read some Bible verses that are going to help us understand this. I was saying, the window's locked, the door's locked, your dad's here, you have this big chocolate lab that's going to run and bark at anything that moves that comes in the door. Don't worry about it. We'll keep you safe. And in his mind, it doesn't matter. This shadow is scary. And so my wife and him went through this verse, which happens to be Psalm 118:6, and it says this: "The Lord is my helper. I will not be afraid. What can mere mortals do to me?" I don't know if that's what turned the corner for Trevor, but I sure think it is. Because since then, he hasn't really struggled with those kinds of things being scary. We might have some dark and difficult days ahead. We might have some dark shadows of debt, anxiety, and sickness hanging over us. But we need to remember, the Lord is my helper. I will not be afraid. What can mere mortals do to me? I don't know what lies ahead. But I can tell you that my darkest days have done more to shape the brightest ones than anything else in my life. My darkest moments in my life, when I was at total rock bottom, have done more to shape the person that I am today than anything else. The reason that is, when you're at the bottom, when you're in the bottom of the pit, the only way you can look is up. There's nowhere else to look. You end up going, I cannot do this anymore. God, you are the only thing that can get me through this. I hope that our future is not that bad, but I don't know. What I do know is if any of you are struggling in that way, I beg you to look up and look around. Once you get up out of that pit, look around and ask for some help from each and every one of us. I pray that this is where the church in America reaches a turning point. The church in America has done a lot to scare people from it, I think, by ways of tradition and by ways of maybe some, not Sunrise, but some churches that have done some kind of not smart things in judging people instead of loving them first, and not being Jesus to people who really need it, not showing grace when a brand new Christian doesn't act like a Christian who's been around for a long time. And so I hope that this is a turning point. People are scared and people are broken. These are the times when you can turn to your friend. You can be watching social media and seeing how they're doing and saying, hey, I'm here. Can I Skype you sometime and we can talk through what you're going through? Or please text me and let me know. Call me, anything. I'd love to talk through this with you. I've seen a lot of fears on Facebook, and I really have tried to say, hey, I'm praying for you. If nothing else, I am praying for you. They need us to show up and show God's love to them more than ever. Continuing on in verse 7, it says this: "Remember your leaders who spoke the word of God to you. Consider the outcome of their way of life and imitate their faith." Our society looks up to people for all the wrong reasons. Our society looks up to people who have wealth. We talked about that. That's not what life is about. Our society looks up to people who have fame. That's not what life is about. That's not what Jesus calls us to. We forget to look at the outcome of their way of life. There are some great, famous, wealthy people who have done great things. Kobe Bryant died in a helicopter crash a few months ago, and that was an awful, terrible thing. But what came out of that is all of these people who have never told the stories of how amazing he was about being generous. There's one story I can think of that there was a little kid who just loved him. He was about 6 years old. He had cancer. Kobe happened to be in town for a basketball game of some sort, and he went and saw this kid who was his biggest fan. And they went into a gymnasium. They played basketball together. And as they're leaving, he turns to the hospital worker, whoever had gotten him in the first place, and contacted him and said, hey, is there any way you could come and meet this little amazing kid? And Kobe says this. He says, what's the deal here? Is this a financial thing? Can this terminally ill kid, can I help? If there's anything I can do, I'd be more than happy to donate whatever it took to heal this kid. And the hospital person said, hey, there's nothing we can do. This is terminal. And the kid died a few weeks later. And that's a sad thing, but it's good to show who Kobe really was in being generous. So it's not impossible, but it's not probable, right? It's really easy to look up to the wrong people. Now, we have in our leadership here and in our past leadership some amazing people to look up to. When I say to look up to these people, they come as a pair, right? I'm only talking about the men who are leaders in this church, but their wives were every bit as instrumental in reaching the women in this church as well, and so they come as a pair. So I want us to think through this, and through these tough times when we're wondering how I could have done things differently maybe in the past, so be a little more prepared for these financial hardships or whatever is coming. I want you to remember these people: Dennis Queen, Paul Steele, Rick Pickle, Dean Westerman, Bud Gothman, Bob Rubleski, Mark Kent, Troy Burns, and many others that I'm probably forgetting. But what is the outcome of their way of life? Not just being generous, not just being amazing people who love us, but what's the outcome? It's all of you. It's all of us. It's all of our eternity. They did everything they did, and all those hours and hours worth of work. I didn't really know how much work church leadership was until I was in it, being in elders meetings once a month and all the craziness that goes on there. I didn't understand how busy elders were and how difficult leading is. But man, it makes me value them, seeing their hearts in those meetings and seeing how much they love all of you so deeply, that they've done all that they've done up until this point. This church exists today, and I don't mean this building, I mean all of you exists today because of their commitment to your eternity. That matters more than anything else in their life. Everything they do leads up to more people going to heaven, whether it be you or me or that person walking down the street that we haven't saved yet. They are the reason the Sunrise will get through this financially. They're the reason the Sunrise will get through this mentally and emotionally. We will get through this difficult time, but it is because of them. It is because of the outcome of their life that we can come through with this. Our building is paid off. That helps a lot. That was a lot to do with Dennis and his leadership financially to say, hey, this is an important thing because there might be storms ahead, and if we have a paid off building, we don't have a payment anymore, we'll be a lot more financially stable. What a blessing Dennis was in that leadership. Their wisdom and faith in the truth is spoken in verse 8. This is why I believe they believe it. Verse 8 says this: Jesus Christ is the same yesterday and today and forever. While everything on earth is constantly changing, Jesus is the same today, yesterday, and forever. So don't take your eye off the goal. Heaven, through the salvation that Jesus offers, is the goal. Eternity in heaven with all of you is the goal. Verses 9 through 14 say this: do not be carried away by all kinds of strange teachings. It is good for our hearts to be strengthened by grace, but not by eating ceremonial foods, which are no benefit to those who do so. Verse 10 says, we have an altar from which those who minister at the tabernacle have no right to eat. The high priest carries blood of animals to the most holy place as a sin offering. But the bodies are burned outside the camp. And so Jesus also suffered outside the city gate to make the people holy through his own blood. Let us then go to him outside the camp, bearing the disgrace he bore. For here we do not have an enduring city, but we're looking at the city that is to come. It is so easy for everyone, Christians, non-Christians, to think that church happens once a week in this brick building that they see that's across from the old Hastings, right? That's most of the time where I tell people we are, and almost everybody knows where we are physically, but church doesn't happen here specifically all the time, right? Especially now. We might have a church service, but church happens throughout the week with all of you meeting in your homes for small groups. Church happens a Wednesday night at youth group. Church happens when you pray with that coworker who just lost a baby or whatever the case may be. These terrible events that are coming, praying with those people and praying for the people that are struggling, that is church, when we commune together and pray for those people. It's our small group, or it's our prayer chain that goes out when anytime anybody is struggling. We all drop everything and pray for those people so that they know this peace that God can offer and the healing and the support that gives. But that's not all, right? Jesus called us not to just suffer for him, but to suffer outside the camp, right? I view church as kind of the camp where we come, we get charged up, and then we go back out into the world. Every Sunday morning, most Sunday mornings, I should say, almost every Sunday morning, I pray that God would shed the scales of the week that the world builds up as we're praying for worship right before. And I just ask that worship does that, because music is something that reaches past into our soul, I think. I think that's why music is so important in our service. Worship reaches in, and I just ask that the scales of the week that the world builds up are shed, because I think it's so important to be able to understand the world is hard, and we build up these calluses to these difficult things that the world puts us through. And so often, we don't understand that out there is the hard part. Right out there is where Jesus calls us. He wants us to be outside the city, suffering with him, outside the camp, in the world. That's the hard part. Coming to church is fairly easy, at least for me. Moving on to Matthew 25, 31 through 46 says this. When the Son of Man comes in his glory and all the angels with him, he will sit in his glorious throne. All the nations will be gathered before him, and he will separate the people from the other, as a shepherd separates the sheep from the goats. He will put the sheep on his right and the goats on his left. Then the king will say to those on his right, "Come, you who are blessed by my Father. Take your inheritance from the kingdom prepared for you since the creation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you invited me in. I needed clothes, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you looked after me. I was in prison, and you came to visit me." Then the righteous man will answer, "Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you? And when did we, or thirsty and give you something to drink? When did we see you as a stranger and invite you in, or in needing clothes and clothe you? When did we see you sick or in prison and go visit you?" The king will reply, "Truly I tell you, whatever you did for one of the least of these, brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me." Then he will say to those on his left, "Depart from me, you who are cursed, into the eternal fire prepared for the devil and his angels. For I was hungry, and you gave me nothing to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me nothing to drink. I was a stranger, and you did not invite me in. I needed clothes, and you did not clothe me. I was sick and in prison, and you did not look after me." They will also answer, "Lord, when did we see you hungry or thirsty or a stranger or needing clothes or sick or in prison and did not help you?" He will reply, "Truly I tell you, whatever you did not do for one of the least of these, you did not do for me." Then they will go away to eternal punishment, but the righteous to eternal life. I don't say this to build myself up. I say this to help you understand my mindset. But I have, as far as I know, never missed 3 weeks of church in a row in my life. Church as a body meeting weekly is a very important thing. But I think it's easy for people like me to think that they can check the box by coming to this building once a week or twice a week or 3 times a week or whatever the case is. If I just come to this building, I can check that box and be good enough. But that verse says, nope, not true. Did he say that coming to a building and meeting with everyone was good enough? No. He said it was good when you fed me, you gave me water, you invited me in, you clothed me, you helped me when I was sick. We've been forced out of the camp of these 4 walls, not by brute force, but because we love other people. We didn't leave this building initially because the governor said we had to. We decided we were going to do that, and then the mandate came out. We love the people in our community who this virus is most dangerous for. And that could be some of us. It could be me. There's people that have gotten it, that have no underlying issues that they know of, and it hits them really, really hard. We've been forced out, and now it's time to go. It's time to feed, to water, invite, clothe, and help the sick. In some ways, that might be staying away. But in a lot of ways, that's finding other ways to reach those people. This time has forced us to change. It's forced us to stop. It's forced us to slow down. We've had to adapt our small groups, maybe meeting through Zoom or Facebook or Instagram or Skype or one of the many ways we are blessed to be able to do that nowadays. For me, as a youth minister here, it's been an amazing thing. I've gotten to contact my kids in the place that they live. We even played some games through our video chat. We've done amazing things through this new way of having to communicate and keep in contact with the kids here in the youth group at Sunrise. So I want to close with a story of my own. There's going to be a video playing in a second, and then I want to tell you about it. So here you go. Download Zoom. We'll figure it out. I got you. Being 7, you're so excited for your birthday. So excited to see these people, your friends. You're going to have a birthday party with some of your friends from school that you don't get to see outside of school. And then, nope, you can't do any of that because the virus says you can't, and we're going to stay home. We did a video thing through Facebook with family as the open presents, and that was okay. But man, it was so cool to have everybody drive by our house. Most of those people are in our small group. Just to bless Trevor and to say, hey, buddy, we care about you. Even through these times when it's a little less convenient to care about you, we care about you so much. It meant a lot to him. And I just hope that through these times, You and I can be looking around and seeing those little things that we can do to show people why we are the way that we are. Because he lives, we seek the lost, we show his love, and we share the truth. That means more now than ever. Like I said earlier, people are looking for an answer. People are looking for peace. They're scared, they're anxious, and they don't know what the future holds. We can be a light in this world that is very confused and very scared. I think more now than ever, people will be receptive to your asking how they're doing and asking if everything's okay and asking if you can help them in some way. I think it's so important to understand. The hearts are open now. Please pray with me as we close today. Dear Lord in heaven, I thank you so much for this church. I thank you so much for this country where we value the nurses and the doctors who are out on the front lines battling this virus every day. God, I just ask that you would get rid of this, that you would heal this, heal the sick, and help people know that there is no other way this happened but through you and your power. God, you are a powerful God. We know you are capable of taking this away. But even if you don't, we will serve you, God. We understand that through these times of turmoil and strife and fear, that you are teaching us something. What must we learn? God, please help us in the future when we can meet again as a body to know how valuable it is that we get to meet. God, to know how valuable it is that we have this peace that passes all understanding that only you can give. Please continue to bless Sunrise. Help us to be a church that reaches out into Shadle and says, hey, in these times of darkness and fear and anxiety, we are here. Please come. We love you. Lord, we thank you so much for all you do. Continue to bless us. Continue to show us your way. Show us the people around us that need you and that need to be shown you through us and who we are. In Jesus' name, amen.